Hi, this is Eric, and today we're going to be talking about combat, which can be one of the most utterly boring experiences in role-playing games. Why? Well, let's say you plan a game for Thursday or Friday or Saturday or whenever your games happen to be, and you set aside, 4 hours to play together. Good, long, solid game. A combat could conceivably take up 30% or more of that time together. That's a long time. Combats can run 45 minutes to an hour, to an hour and a half. And if all it is people waiting for their turn to come up so that they can roll dice and maybe hit, this could be a purgatory-like experience unless it's brought to life. So today we're going to be talking about how to bring your combats to life, and we'll be using some really cool stuff from Critical Role. I mean, why not look at some people who've been playing together for years and years who happen to put their stuff on the internet and see if maybe we can learn some techniques for how to bring your combats to life. This is GM Ball. Okay, so in the last couple of videos, I've talked about some techniques that you can use to bring your combat to life. One of them being Popcorn Initiative. The Angry GM has it all on his website. I highly recommend you go and read it. How does it work? Well, basically, Popcorn Initiative forces your players to role play with one another and to strategically think through who's going to go next, what they're going to do, and then to role play that in the course of combat. How do they do that? Well, you roll initiative once, and then the person who gets the highest roll, they sort of take control of the combat. They pass the initiative to the next player character, or perhaps to a monster, right? There's some strategy involved. I go through that in other videos, and you can read the Angry GM's notes on it. Why would you use it? Well, it's one of the ways to keep your player characters engaged, your players engaged with the combat, and not sitting there waiting for the next player to go. Because let's just imagine you have 5 or 6 players in a party. Now, maybe your group is smaller than that, but I have a large group. I have 6 players with 6 player characters and an NPC that often is involved in combat. That means literally yawn fest if you aren't trying to make it interesting or engaging people on other people's turns. I mean, literally, I have watched my players fall asleep during combat. Oh my goodness, you now are taking 30% of your game and turning it into this dry, die-rolling experience. There has got to be a better way, and there is. Popcorn Initiative is one way to do that. It makes sure that people are listening, that they're talking to one another, but there are other great ways. So I'm going to take a look at some great examples from a terrific group of role players and a terrific GM to see if we can draw out some principles for how to bring your combat to life. All right, so let's begin with descriptions.
"24. As you're both kind of on the cusp of this cavern, looking out of this expanse and investigating kind of the walkway out and having this conversation, you hear the voice and you glance up, and there, standing right above the lip of this, and you now can see behind you this massive blackened mountain, this volcanic mass of rock, in which various long tendrils of glowing orange lava are pouring on the sides. You see, clasped over the side, a massive, semi-humanoid, almost feminine figure made of just roiling flame. This entire torso just burning ember and bright light and fire. The head itself, the hair, this swirling mass of spiraling flame. The eyes, these burning cinders. "The sanctum must be cleansed." And it dives, kind of curling over on the inside. This is a large entity that darts into the tunnel like a reverse backdraft.
Past us?
They didn't respond to my user sent us?
Descriptions on top of your Popcorn Initiative should be an enormous part of what you do during combat. You know, it's one thing to describe a tavern when your player characters walk in and describe the NPCs over in the corner and the smells and things like that. That really does begin to bring your world to life. But if you aren't doing that in combat, and I have to be honest with you, this is work because you have to think through it. And maybe you are one of those game masters that's just amazing at improv. Or maybe you're the kind of game master that needs to have some descriptive notes on the side. Let me talk about one of the challenges that I have faced as a game master. I do my games 100% virtual. All of my players are in another state. And so we use Roll20, you could use any virtual tabletop, in order to play together, and Scabbard RPG Campaign Manager to show them lore and pictures and things like that. We have, I have to say, kind of a philosophy in our group, and we've talked about it offline quite a bit, and that is we do not want our role-playing game experience to turn into a really crappy video game. When you're playing in a virtual tabletop, it's really easy. Say you lay out this really cool dungeon in a virtual tabletop. You've got, shadows, and you've done your dynamic lighting and all this kind of stuff, and people have their tokens, and they're moving their tokens through this dungeon. It's not long before you have turned your role-playing game into a absolutely horrible video game of moving tokens, boring tokens, through a boring dungeon. Yeah, maybe it seemed cool at first, but trust me, after a while, it just becomes a crappy video game. We don't want that. Now, I still need battle maps. Just like if I was playing in a live game, I would love to have like a 3D representation of the battlefield with miniatures. I like having a, representation of the game, whether in isometric or in just, top-down kind of view. That's still really helpful, and it can be helpful to negotiate through some of the combat strategies and logistics and things like that. But I have to be honest, I have let the battle map speak for me. I've decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to let the battle map do the describing. That's my job as a game master. So before I put the battle map up, I'm describing the battlefield. I'm going to describe how it smells. I'm going to describe the obstacles that are there. I'm going to describe the lighting. And I'm going to describe things that simply cannot be represented in a battle map. And especially since I don't always have time to design my own battle maps, and I do borrow some of the terrific battle maps that are out there and available for game masters. I'll be honest with you, it's laziness that would keep me from describing the battlefield and letting the battle map do the talking. So, for example, if you have a battle map of a river running through a forest, and there's going to be a battle there, don't just throw up the battle map. Stop. Don't show your players yet. Describe the grass. Describe the river. It's dark and murky, 8 to 10 feet deep. The water is moving slow, but it's frozen and cold. To your left and to your right are enormous trees with 10-foot trunks. They're rough hewn oaks, and behind them is excellent cover. Above you are overarching arms and branches of trees that are completely closing out the light, except a trickle of sparkling light coming through the trees down onto the water and the grass below. There is a steep incline to the left and the right of the river. See what I'm doing, right? Before they ever see the battle map, I'm trying to put a picture in their minds of the way this combat will go, and they themselves will help me go through the combat. Because if they know there's a steep incline into the water, that the water is 8 to 10 feet deep, they know that it's going to create disadvantage. It might be slipping going on as they're trying to move through this area, as opposed to just moving their tokens or miniatures around. They're actually beginning to help me think of the physical logistics of the game. So make sure, using your power as a game master, to fully describe the environment of the battle. The combat's description is incredibly important to bringing that picture to life.
The creature, the brightness suddenly lights up the interior of the hallway like a rolling fireball. These flaming, curling horns kind of leading it as it kind of darts through just into range as you release the spell. This blast of freezing cold energy just immediately flash freezes the inside of this entire hallway and blasts into this creature. Is it a Constitution saving throw, correct?
It is
14. I do not believe it makes it based on the item, the DC of the
30. The DC is the staff different than me? Hold on.
You got it. So poof, it goes off. Immediately the whole wall just flash freezes and the creature kind of pushes through it. You can see its flames burn brighter for a second, almost angrily pushing off the freezing cold. And at the same time, all the ice that's gathered in the walls immediately turns to vapor.
Okay, so what's another technique that we can use to bring life into our combat? Well, one of the things that you can think about doing is asking your players, before you ever get to the combat, to describe their spells and their weapons in detail. Why is this important? Because during the combat, if somebody's using a battle axe with, chunks out of it, and they make a good hit, they might describe the wound with a little bit more detail if they have a good picture in their mind of the battle axe and its effect on whatever it is that they hit. The other thing about spells are a huge opportunity for description. And yet we assume that every spell looks the same. And yet it can't. It can't possibly look the same. You got a warlock over here with a patron who's a dark god of the stars and the heavens. And over here, you've got a standard wizard from the local wizard factory, right? Well, and they each cast some kind of, spell, like a firebolt or an eldritch blast or something like that, magic missile or anything along those lines. Surely, the wizard from school Red Dragon and the wizard from school Death Knight, whatever these happen to be, their spells are going to look a bit different. You would hope they look a little bit different, and ask them how they look different. Is the firebolt spiraling fingers of blazing red fire, or is it bluish tinted? If maybe they have a patron, a god who is a nature god, and the firebolt has a different kind of feel completely, like the smell of burning wood in a forest fire accompanies their firebolt. I don't know. The main thing is that you get your players involved in thinking through how these spells look so that they're not just stereotypical. And even if they are stereotypical, it's okay to have them describe them, right? So that way, whenever it comes to combat time, you can say, okay, what are you doing? Soshu, you cast a spell. What's going on? Oh, I cast magic missile. What does it look like? Oh, it looks like I described to you. Like, literally the stars fall from the sky and curl into a ball and shoot forth from my hand. And then when they hit, these sparkles of stars like the night sky go around the creature. Awesome, right? Then you can use that as a part of the battlefield atmosphere and to create an atmosphere so that it's not just rolling dice and it becomes this incredibly pedantic, logistical recitation of what did you roll and what did I roll and what's your armor class, right? We're fully describing the battle. So that's a great way to do it. Have your players engage in some imagination before the combat to tell you how their spells look and how their weapons look and how they use them, right? And particular combat techniques. What does this barbarian do as opposed to that barbarian whenever they swing and miss? What's their favorite action, right? And then in addition to that, here's a really cool technique, another really cool technique. One of the things that you can do to engage your players when somebody else is having their turn is after they take their action, you can describe what the other player character sees, right? So Li Chao, the monk, jumps from the edge of the steep incline bank onto a rock. He makes his DC check and is able to quickly gain his footing, but then wanting to jump to the next rock, fails his acrobatics check entirely and slips into the river. Tokard, you watch as Li Chao does a front flip, landing firmly, and then you kind of anticipate he's going to be able to make this next jump, but is unable to make it, and you watch and immediately reach forward like you wish you could catch him as he falls into the water next to the river wyvern. Why did I do that? I could have just described it. But as soon as I said his name, Tokard's player is listening, and imagining what Tokard is seeing, and maybe his player character starts to engage by saying something like, "You idiot, why did you try for the second rock?" Right? So there's great ways that you can use descriptions by specifically targeting other players and where they're located. If you've got a Kinku hiding behind a tree, you could say, Strum of the Kinku peeks out from behind the tree and watches as Li Chao falls into the water right next to the River Wyvern. That just makes it more interesting. That's a terrific technique. So you got 3 already. You got Popcorn Initiative. You've got descriptions of the combat area before you ever throw up a map. You have asking the players beforehand to fully describe their weapons, their combat techniques, and their spells so that you can use those in battle. Now, the other really important technique is something that you can use in a very organized fashion. You can sort of be somewhat deliberate about this and commit to doing it, if not every time, close to every time a player takes their turn. So you ask the rogue, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to hide behind the rock, and I'm going to grab my hand crossbow, and I'm going to fire once, attempting a sneak attack. Okay, make your roll. Roll. You hit. You got an 18. You got your sneak attack damage.
15 plus things. So probably 26 to hit.
That does hit, yeah.
Because this creature is engaged, do I get my sneak attack?
You do.
Okay.
I love that we still ask it that question at this point.
Hey, it's always good to check.
6 years. Yeah.
40 points of damage.
40 points of damage. Slick. Bryce is like raking into Caleb, and now just in flames, which is still kind of within his expertise. You rush around the corner, see that, and fire at once, and it strikes it kind of in the middle of the torso area, and you see as it impacts, and a portion within its flames darkens for a second. The flames kind of almost go like a blue-green angrily, like it's reacting to the impact.
It looks like it took a
Every single time there's a player's turn is an opportunity to fully describe how the turn played out, to give it that cinematic quality. That's that great word, right? Cinematic. But we want it to be memorable, and in order to do that, we have to engage players' imagination. In order to do that, you need to have some improv skills for how the turns play out, whether it's through spells or hits or whatever. Missing entirely. Oh, you missed. All right, next turn. No, don't do that. No, you swing, striking slowly and a little bit too slowly as the wyvern twists and arcs its back and you graze off the edge of these hardened scales. So much better than you missed. So, take an opportunity. It takes a lot of energy. I'll be honest with you. A long combat can be a little bit tiring, right? You're engaging your brain for this long period of time, and sometimes in combat, it's okay to just say, "Hey, stop, guys! I need to go get a soda or something like that. My throat's hurting, and I want to take a little brain break or something like that," because that can give you some time to think through. Okay, well, what are some cool descriptions I can give next? So it gives yourself some time to think of some good improv lines.
That brings us to Veth.
All right. How far away am I from across the room there?
You are approximately 90-ish, so 100 feet.
I will...
Took a gamble. Where to send him?
I will run as... Oh, boy. Is there a clear shot across the lava? Like if I hopped on some rocks?
Another thing that can happen is your players can get tired, right? A long combat can be tiring for the players, and they may have had really, really cool strategies in mind, but they've lost focus. Well, a couple things can happen here. First of all, I want you to give yourself permission to step outside reality. What do I mean by that? Well, obviously, in a combat, if you have 6 to 10 seconds to take a player character's turn, it would be pretty hard for player character 1, the fighter, to turn to player character 2, the mage, and say, "Hey, mage, remember that time you used the web and we used it in combat and actually got them stuck in that whole section, and then I was able to come behind them, we flanked them, we were able to take out that ogre in a short period of time? Yeah, you remember that? What if that would work here?" That would be impossible in combat, wouldn't it? Maybe you're the kind of GM that really likes to, focus on verisimilitude. No, you cannot say that. You wouldn't have said that. That's impossible. It's 10 seconds and there's the din of combat. It's okay to step outside reality. It is perfectly okay to step outside reality in favor of engagement. Why? Because this is a game. It is not reality. And giving your players an opportunity to talk through strategy, what is that doing? That's giving them an opportunity to stay engaged and think strategically and treat it like it's a puzzle or something for them an obstacle to overcome, right? And if all you're doing is constantly saying, well, that can't really happen. Well, you can't possibly do that. And no, you couldn't have said that across the battlefield. Okay, yeah, you're right. But giving some grace and being aware of when your players are finally really interested in what's going on and just letting that happen. And something else that you can just let happen is giving players a chance to think and maybe even reconsider. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this clip.
I mean, yeah. Just
I gotta get over there, but we gotta kill these things.
We got to kill them, or else they're just gonna kill us more.
Then I will. I gotta kill these things. Okay. And I need sneak attack. I'll take the movement back. I'll bonus action hide, I guess, at the edge of the.
Edge of here?
Yeah. That's.
So what's going on here? This is a huge lull in combat. These are really experienced players and a really experienced GM, and yet there's this kind of massive pause in the action, if you will, as one of the players doesn't quite know what to do next and reconsiders actions and overthinks and then tries again and even, has their miniature moved and then moves it back and I don't think I would have done that. There's moments where people, well, if you go that direction, you can end up in the lava. What's going on here? That is engagement, is what that is. That is engagement in the actions of what's going on in a game that is not even really happening. There is no real place where people are fighting a lava monster. It is all happening in our minds. So giving players the opportunity to engage with that imaginary scenario, that makes combat interesting, as long as you do this. After that lull, after players really said, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I thought his spell was going to work and it didn't. I thought he was going to swing his axe and take out the monster and he didn't. That completely changes what I was going to do. Right? Let that happen. Let that moment of indecision happen. Then when it's over and you've figured it out, get clarity from your players. Okay, so what are you doing? What actually happens? They state their action, they make their attack, they do what they're going to do, even if what they're going to do is, I hold my action. I'll waste my reaction, and if somebody gets hurt, I'm going to heal. Okay, describe it.
Probably climb a little bit of this wall to do so.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay. So you kind of scramble up the side of this rock wall and peer out from almost the above part and kind of...
And I'll load a Cataclysm Bolt.
Okay.
And fire it at the... They're all within 5 feet of each other?
Yes, they just split in the same space.
I have a 1 in 3 chance, so I'll load a Cataclysm Bolt and shoot it right at the lead guy.
Do any
the one
of
closest
them
to you? Okay.
is it advantage on any of them?
Right now, they all have advantage on them because of your... guiding
Oh,
bolt.
then I don't need to hide at all.
Because you instantly
That's right. Because they're lit.
Because I would get sneak attack. So I'll just dash out there.
Because they're lit up from
Yeah.
Jester's
So you
magic.
dash out to there.
Yeah, and fire as I go.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on, Mama.
Natural 20.
That's a bad combo.
Angry mother.
You wrecked my kid.
So you take that lull in the action and you turn it into a moment in the game. And a little bit of a description of the surroundings of where the player characters are. So you take everything, you throw everything into this cake you are baking called combat.
However, the one you shot, the sheer fury of what you briefly imagine in your head may have transpired. While you were not there to see necessarily the moment of the dodging of it, realization of the blast wave, thinking of the proximity of your family, and then hearing Marion scream, everything just goes quiet for a second. And you have that kind of moment. And as you were kind of you were just phasing out of reality at this moment. Your eyes go a bit blurry and the body takes over, and without even thinking, you just load the bolt, rush out to the side, fire it. You're not even looking at the creature that you shot at as it strikes it, and you hear an echo of it kind of scream on your periphery as the impact causes it to dissipate.
Oh, it fires again by itself,
Yeah.
actually. That's a 24.
Well, you have advantage in the next shot, too, because all three of them are glowing.
What does that mean? So I roll
Okay,
again?
roll again.
See if you get
Because
a
it's
natural
because,
20.
because of your guiding bolt and it's split, technically, I'd say the magic would probably...
Natural 20.
This is crazy. All right.
So you take that lull in the action and you turn it into a moment in the game. And a little bit of a description of the surroundings of where the player characters are. So you take everything, you throw everything into this cake you are baking called combat. All right. I think that's a lot. And I think, having looked at what Matt Mercer does with his descriptions, the fact that he takes moments to describe how spells affect the bad guy, how the bad guy's spells don't just, he explodes. No, there's a full description of what happens there. He makes mistakes. He corrects himself. There's a lot of give and take and grace in a really good combat. Moments for players to think through their actions. So if you look back over all the techniques we've been going through in this video, you've got Popcorn Initiative that can keep your players engaged. You've got describing the battlefield ahead of time, and then especially during the actual action of the combat to make sure they're using their brain and not a physical representation that's just really just symbolic of how the battlefield really looks. Taking some time before the game to give your players a chance to describe their combat maneuvers, their weapons that they like to use, their spells, another great way to make your combats interesting. And then, of course, describing the actions, taking time after the rolls, after everybody's taken an action, and fully describe how it affects the creature or how it affects the player character whenever that creature swings its mighty battle axe and literally takes a character out, knocking them across the battlefield. And then finally, giving space for things that may not be very realistic, which is like discussions of strategy during the game. You can let them do that and then follow that with a full description of how the combat ends. So all those things in your mind may be hard to keep track of, and maybe descriptions are challenging to keep track of. So whether you're a GM that likes to improv everything, which is me, or you're a GM that likes to write things down in advance, thinking through your battles in this way can be a lot of fun. And allowing the roles that the players make to change the battlefield and change your descriptions and all that can be really, really exciting. But the most important thing you do is recognize that a combat shouldn't always be fast. You shouldn't be trying to get through it as quickly as possible, like it's some kind of, plate of broccoli and spinach and liver, or, a shot from the doctor. Or, the combat is a part of the game. And it should be imaginative, it should be creative, it should be well described, and then you will have memorable cinematic experiences. All right, well, thanks a lot for watching. We appreciate all the time that you spend watching our videos. This is a relatively new video channel, so thanks for stopping by. If you would please consider sharing this with somebody that you think might be interested in this, and like and subscribe. We're just trying to build here. But either way, we do it for fun. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. I'm Eric, and this is GM Vault.